Welcome back. Well, viewers, 7 bombers, 14 bombs and 19 hours from takeoff to the strike. It was the dead of the night and an entire nation was sleeping in Iran, but the US stealth bombers pulled off a midnight strike. It was a hammer blow to Iran's nuclear ambitions with massive airstrikes on their 3 nuclear facilities, Natanz, Fordow as well as Isfahan. Now, the United States claims to have decimated all 3 facilities. But the focus is on Fordow, one of the nuclear facilities in Iran that was believed to be out of reach of most militaries across the world, simply because of how deep under the ground this facility was situated. Now, state-of-the-art military equipment, including the B-2 stealth bombers carrying the GBU-57 bunker buster bombs, were used in the operation. And the United States claims that it has completely obliterated Iran's nuclear facilities. But the United States says that it is still open for dialogue and hopes that Iran accepts their deal. But Tehran has made it clear that the time for diplomacy is over.
A short time ago, the U.S. military carried out massive precision strikes on the 3 key nuclear facilities in the Iranian regime: Fordow, Natanz, and Esfahan. Tonight, I can report to the world that the strikes were a spectacular military success. Iran's key nuclear enrichment facilities have been completely and totally obliterated. Iran, the bully of the Middle East, must now make peace. If they do not, future attacks will be far greater and a lot easier.
Congratulations, President Trump. Your bold decision to target Iran's nuclear facilities with the awesome and righteous might of the United States will change history. America has been truly unsurpassed. It has done what no other country on earth could do.
This mission was not and has not been about regime change. The President authorized a precision operation to neutralize the threats to our national interests posed by the Iranian nuclear program and the collective self-defense of our troops and our ally Israel.
The warmongering and lawless administration in Washington is solely and fully responsible for the dangerous consequences and far-reaching implications of its act of aggression.
But viewers, how is Iran now planning to retaliate? While military action may soon be on the cards, the first step that Iran plans to take is going to have larger ramifications on the global crude oil supply chain. The Iranian parliament is preparing to shut the Strait of Hormuz, and this could effectively cripple the global oil supply chain. Let's tell you why the Strait of Hormuz is significant and what could happen if Iran actually decides to shut the space completely. It is located between the Persian Gulf and Gulf of Oman, and it's significant because it is the world's most strategically important choke point, and it serves as a primary export route for the Gulf producers. So it allows about 20% of the world's daily oil consumption to move from here, to pass from here, which is why if Iran actually decides to stop it or shut it completely, it is going to hit the oil supply chains across the globe, which could send the prices increasing. So how much does India really depend on the Strait of Hormuz? Let's talk about how we could be affected. Could the closing of Strait of Hormuz severely affect India? Let's tell you some figures. Now, India is keeping a close watch of what is happening, and this is India's daily oil import, which is 5.5 million barrels per day. So this is the kind of oil that India imports every day. But is it all coming from the Strait of Hormuz, or is it from different places because of which India will not be affected too much? So let's tell you that about 2 million barrels per day pass through the Strait of Hormuz. So this is where India could be affected. But what's also important to mention is that about 40% of India's oil imports pass via Strait of Hormuz. For about 60% of India's oil imports, it's not going to be affected. So there could be an effect because of which India is saying that it is keeping a close watch. If there is an impact, what really are the options before India? Let's also talk about that. India could certainly need to depend further on the oil imports from both Russia as well as the United States. India has already increased the share of both Russian oil imports as well as that of the United States in just the last 1 month. So let's talk about how, if Iran actually shuts down this Hormuz trade route, how is it going to affect India, and what are the alternative sources that India could depend on? First and the most significant, of course, is going to be the oil import from Russia. Remember, even as Russia was in a war with Ukraine, and while there was some criticism from the West, India was clear that we are going to continue trade with Russia. So 1.96 million barrels per day, this was the number in May 2025. So that's the kind of imports that we are looking at. In June, it has in fact seen a jump. It has been increased to 2.2 million barrels per day. Similarly, India has also increased its oil imports from the United States, which means that even if this particular region is affected, there may be a slight impact on India, but India has diversified, because of which the impact is not going to be very, very critical. So the oil imports from the United States has also been increased. In May 2025, it was 0.28 million barrels per day. It has seen a marginal increase, being increased to 0.43 million barrels per day.
Insofar as the global situation today is concerned, the escalation of tensions in the Middle East was not entirely unexpected. In fact, we had foreshadowed this escalation, and the government under the Honorable Prime Minister has been consistently and periodically reviewing the situation, including the possibility of the closure of the Straits of Hormuz. And as I have mentioned earlier, we had diversified the sources of supply, and out of the 5.5 million barrels of crude oil that India consumes daily, about 1.5 and 2 million only come through the Straits of Hormuz. We import roughly 4 million barrels through other routes, and our companies, the oil marketing companies, have enough stocks. Most of them have stocks up to 3 weeks. One of them has in fact 25 days stocks, and we are also confident that we can increase the supply of crude through other routes should the situation so warrant. We are in touch with all possible actors in this, the supply routes, etc., and I believe that there is no cause for any alarm on this score. Of course, we will be watching the unfolding situation, and the Honorable Prime Minister has already spoken with all the major leaders. He's had a long conversation with the President of Iran also, and calling for de-escalation. It is our hope, and all of us are expecting that the situation will result in calm and de-escalation rather than further escalation. But meanwhile, we continue to be prepared to meet the evolving situation.
All right. So the union minister saying that India is keeping a close watch, but it is not going to be greatly affected because the situation in the Middle East, the escalation that we witness now was not unexpected. It was in the offing. With that, it's time for us to slip into a very quick break here. Don't go anywhere. The morning news hour with my colleague Amita coming up on the other side.